Hi, Web Design 1 class. It's Mrs. Miskin. I'm going to be going over the third and final CSS practice page, the Sushi Restaurant page. Here is what it looks like. Mostly there's just a little bit down below that doesn't fit in my screen. Again, you do have a screenshot on Schoology that you can refer to. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to just show you what the Schoology page looks like. This is in week 8. And it's on 8-5 to start it. So there are 6 different images that you're going to need. There's a couple of different colors and a navigation font, and then 3 paragraphs on that page that I have the text for. So remember, when you're downloading these, a real quick reminder, create a new folder for the sushi page. So in your web design folder, just like we've done on the other 2, create a new folder, call it sushi or sushi restaurant. And then when you're downloading these pictures, put them into that folder. Okay, so make sure that you click on the picture and then hit the download image and save it onto your computer in that folder. Okay, now you have this one, you've got this one, and then these 3 right here are actually backgrounds. And if you just leave the file name as is, it'll help you in styling to differentiate between the others. We've got a logo, and then we've got a couple of different sushi pictures right here that we'll use on that page. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, create that folder, download all of the images. Then once you're done with that step, you'll want to go into brackets and create a new page. Save it as sushi.html. Put it in that folder, that same sushi folder. And then put in all of the required tags. Doc type, open and close HTML, open and close head, and open and close body. So go ahead, pause the video, get all of those steps done, and then we'll pick up with the creation of the HTML page. Okay, let's start deconstructing this page. So first of all of these are going to go into body. In the head, you can put a title in if you would like to. And then you'll, of course, be linking to your external CSS file. You can create that at any time, but we will do the CSS after the HTML is all finished. Okay, so we're going to start with body. And let's look at the very first thing. Now, if you were paying attention to those images as you downloaded them, 3 of them are backgrounds. So this image right here is a background. And I'll tell you how you can tell that it is. This text right here goes over the top of it. It overlaps. You can see that there are things going on top of this one. This with the cherry blossoms is also a background image, and we'll get to where those go later. And then these things appear on top of it also. So you know that those are backgrounds. We're not going to add them as images in HTML. So we'll start right here with this one. That's our logo image. And then directly underneath it, actually, let's back up just a second. We want this to go in the header. Now, I'm actually going to do something a little bit different here, just because we have this kind of weird division on this page. This paragraph right here goes on top of this, and there's not really a good differentiation here. So the easiest thing to do is just put that paragraph inside the header also, and that's okay. And then we'll start with the main down below. Okay, so inside of header, let me go ahead and just make a note of that. Inside of header, we've got an image for the logo. And then directly under that is an unordered list for our navigation bar. That's what all of them have been. This one, however, does not go horizontally. We're going to leave it vertical, but we are going to change it so that it looks like buttons instead of just text. Okay, So start off with that image and then the unordered list with 4 list items. After that, you're going to add this paragraph and the text for it is on Schoology. So go ahead and pause the video, get these elements in for right now. You can also, I think I did this in my code, you can also put the UL, the unordered list, inside of nav tags. Okay, so go ahead and get to that point. All right, I'm going to go ahead and erase this because I need to scroll up on the screen so we can get to this bottom part. Okay, so we should have up to here, and it's not going to look the same. That's okay. We do a lot in styling with this one. Okay, so our header ended up here. Now here, we're going to add the main. Inside of the main, there's a couple things I'm going to point out actually. This is similar to what we did with our Science Club page yesterday, where we had one part of it that was 100% wide. And then you can see that these are lined up in the center. So we need to actually put something around here. And in my code, I did it a little bit differently. I did article and then a couple of sections for these 2 things that are floated. We can do a div. I'll go ahead and just put article just so that my code matches up with what I show you. So inside of main, because the main is going to have this background color, like we did with the header and the divs yesterday on the Science Club page. Okay, so inside of main, just add an article. You could have also done a div and then maybe given it a class if needed. Inside of the article, we've got 2 sections that are very similar. They're going to be the same size. They're floated next to each other. So let's go ahead and add sections with a heading. And I don't have another one, but since this isn't the main point of the page, let's not use H1. We want to do either an H2 or H3. I'm going to put H2 in here. I'm sorry if my code later on says H3 or H4. I don't have it memorized. Sorry, I don't have it right in front of me. And then we've got a paragraph. And then we've got an image. So you're going to do that same thing over here. Section with an H2, an image, and a paragraph. I should probably tell you that. So H2 paragraph image, H2 paragraph image. Then you'll close that second section. Then you should close the article and then close main. After main, we have a footer with 1 paragraph inside of it. That should be very, very familiar. We've done that with all 3 of these now. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, go through these. You can pause it whenever you want to add a code and then come back to it. You should have a main, article, 2 sections. After the closing main, you'll put a footer and then 1 paragraph inside of it. After you close the footer, you should have closing body and closing HTML. So go ahead and take some time to get those put in there. And then then I will show you my code. Okay, you should be finished coding your HTML. Very, very simple, this one. I think yesterday's was probably the most complicated, the Science Club. So let's go ahead and take a look at the actual elements that make up this page. So I'm going to share my screen to show you the HTML. Okay, so we're starting off with doc type. Open HTML, open head. Like I said, I have a title on mine, and then I've already put in the link reference to that CSS. If you haven't, that's great. We'll do it after this HTML step. So open body. Then I've got an open header. and I have an image, that's the logo. And I did use nav tags. And then I've got an unordered list with those 4 list items. Close the nav. Then I've got a paragraph that has text in it. And then I close the header. I'll explain. I've got just an empty paragraph tag right here. I believe that was just for spacing. We'll get to that with styling later if we need to add more. Okay, so after the header, we're opening that main. And like I said, I used an article, but you could have used a div with a class on it, or just div if that was the only one on the page. Then open section. I've got image and then a paragraph. Oh, sorry, skipped over the heading. I don't have it indented very nicely, do I? Okay, so image, heading, paragraph. Then close the section. Open section, image, heading, paragraph. These 2 paragraphs are on Schoology, so you can copy and paste them. Then there's the closing section, closing article, closing main. Then we open the footer. We have that 1 paragraph. Close the footer, close the body, close HTML. Okay, you can go ahead and compare, stop the video if you need to, and rearrange code if you need to, or add in something, but that's what your code should look fairly close to. Now I've got alt tags on my images, and I've got different things like that. So don't stress too much. It doesn't have to be 100%. But go ahead and just add those things in. And next, you will want to create that CSS file. So in brackets, you file a new, file and save, call it sushi or sushi style or something like that, .css. Save that into the same sushi folder that we put the images and this HTML page into. That way they're all in one and they can access one another. Okay, after you've got it created, go back to your HTML and in the head, add that link to the CSS file. I'm going to show you what mine looks like just to be sure. You guys should be very familiar with this by now. Okay, and it's this line right up here. So you've got the link, rel equals style sheet, type equals text / CSS href, and then the name of that file. Okay, all right, now that we're all set, let's get to styling. We'll start with the outermost elements. And again, I'm going to erase this and then start to scroll down just a little bit, or scroll up back to the top. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with the body. If you noticed, when you downloaded those images, one of them does say it's the body background image, and it's going to be this one right here. Okay, so we'll start off by telling the body in CSS to have that background image. Okay, I'm just going to put URL. If you decided to put an images folder in the sushi folder, then yours will look a little bit different. But just make sure that it's that file name for this picture right here. Now, when you add it in, if you save and preview, you're going to see it over here on the left and then repeating, right? And then repeating down here. That's not what we want. So we need to change the background position. And we want it to be in the on the top and in the center. We also don't want it to repeat. Okay, we only want it to appear once. So we'll add that in there. Background repeat is no repeat. And then background position. Is top and center. Okay. All right, so you'll add that in for the body. Next, let's go to the header. Now, again, when you were downloading, if you noted the names, the file names, this right here goes behind the logo, and it's actually going to be the background for the header. We're going to do a similar thing too. We don't want it to repeat, but the header is actually lined up in the center again. So we'll center it and then put that background image in there, and it will be in the right position. So let's go ahead and add code for header. So we want that width to make it centered, and it's going to be 960 again. Okay, I think this image itself is 960, but because there's not an image there that you can see, we'll just go with that, 960. Okay, and then to make it centered, margin left auto, margin right auto. Okay, and then that background image. Okay, and I will let you fill in that file name from wherever you saved it. And that should put this then over here. Oh, we need to add, sorry, background repeat, no repeat on this one, but we don't need to change the position because it automatically goes to the top left. So let's do background repeat. And then no repeat. Okay, right, and that should do it for our header. We may want to add a little padding or margin or something like that later on. Let's go with this for now. When we get done, I will show you my code to you on this styling, and then you can determine if you need to make any adjustments. Okay, I don't believe that we need to do anything with the logo. It should appear over here on the left. And then this list, actually in a nav, and then the unordered list within it, because that's a block element, should then pop down below. Okay, so obviously this unordered list looks much different than what we're used to. So let's go ahead and start with that. The unordered list, notice there are no bullets, and we have to turn that off in the unordered list. This is the only list on the page, so we can use the UL as the element selector. And we're going to use that property list style type and then value none to take the bullets off. Okay, by default, the unordered list will indent just a little bit in. So we're going to tell it to have a margin of 0 so that it doesn't indent in. That way it'll be lined up with this. Okay. All right, and if we need to add maybe any top margin or something like that, we can do that. Let's go ahead and call that good for now. If I see something in my code, I will point it out to you later that we can come back and add to. Let's go on to the list items. Those are obviously much different. And again, we can use the LI as the selector. So first of all, they are a different color. They're a different font. They have a background color. And one thing that we haven't covered yet, but I will give you the code for it. It looks like buttons because the edges are rounded. Okay, so let's start with color first. You can see it's just white. Okay, and then that font family is on Schoology. I believe it's Arial Black, 2 words, so it needs to be in quotation. Okay, and then background color. This is going to be the dark yellow. That text code is on Schoology, so you can go ahead and just copy and paste that in. Okay, now a couple of other things to note. We see this much of a kind of a border, not a border, sorry. We see a lot of that color around there because they're spacing outside of the content, so the text itself. So we're going to need padding on this one. And I'm just going to throw some numbers in here. We'll look over my code later and see what it was exactly, but we do need to have padding so that there's some above and below and then to the side. Okay, we'll go with just 20 px. We'll see where that ends up. You can save it, preview it. If you don't like it, you can always change it. But I will show you exactly what it was a little bit later. Okay, and then the last thing is that rounded corner. Now that is actually in reference to the border. We will cover that in a little bit more detail when we talk about CSS effects later on. But I will give you the code. That is the property border dash radius. So the default for a border is straight, so square or rectangle actually. But to round it, we want to give it a pixel size so that it curves. So it's border dash radius. And then let's start with 10 px and see where that goes. Okay. One other thing that we might do, and I don't remember if I put it on the UL or the LI, because this lines up so exactly with the logo image, one of those two, we could put a width on so that it is exactly that size. Okay, so we can come back to that a little bit later. All right, let's go down to this next item is the paragraph. Now there's quite a bit of space right here above the paragraph, and it doesn't go 100% of the width of the screen. And remember, the header is centered. We did do that already. So this paragraph right here, let's create a class for it. It looks different from these two. So we want to have a class on this one. So let's just call it, I think I called it headline in mind. So let's go ahead and create a class of dot headline. And in our HTML, we'll go ahead and add that class into the paragraph tag. So first of all, it is a bigger text size. So we're going to increase font size. And then we've got some space above. We can use either padding or margin. And it's only going about that far on the screen. So we need to give it a width so that it will cut off right here. So a couple of things, and then color. So let's start with one. Let's do padding top. Actually, let's do margin top and make that maybe 100 pixels. We can adjust it up or down later on. Okay. All right, and then the font size. And default is 16. That's going to be bigger than 16. So maybe twice as big. Let's try that, 32px. And then that color, go ahead and get that. That is the darker yellow, like we did the background color here. So get that from Schoology. Okay, so we've got padding top, font size, color, and we need a width. And I'm just going to say 250px. Again, save it, preview it, see if that looks great to you. If not, you can go ahead and change it. Now, I also have some space behind or underneath here, sorry. And we could do that with padding bottom. We could do it with a margin bottom. I think in my code, I just added an empty paragraph to add that space in there. But there's different methods of doing that. So let's try padding bottom. And we'll say 25px on that one. Okay, and that should be all that we need to do to this paragraph right here. So I'm going to go ahead and erase and move the screen up so that we can get this bottom part. Oh, before we end that paragraph, we called it headline, that class. So make sure that this paragraph says class equals headline in your HTML. Okay, so make sure that class gets put in there. If we do it at the same time, then you're less likely to forget later on. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, so now we've got the main right here. And I just got to empty that in there. Okay, so now we've got the main and we have a background color. So we're going to do something similar to what we did with the top of the header yesterday or a couple of days ago in the science club. So we're going to add the main, and it's not centered, but we're going to center this element inside because we want this color to go all the way across. So our main markers going to fade. So let's do main, and we're going to give it a background color. And then this is the light yellow that is on Schoology. So go ahead and get that hex code if you need to. And it looks like that's all we're going to add in here. Another thing, we could have also maybe added a margin top to the main to make that space in between the paragraphs. So there's several different ways that we can add spacing around. Okay, inside of this, the article was just so that we could center this portion right here. So let's go ahead and add the code for that. So we need a width. And again, we're using 960 just to keep all of these easy. And then we've got margin left auto, margin right auto. Okay, and that should be all that we need for that article. Let's go on to the sections. Now, this we're going to be a little bit more particular, and I will get the exact sizes for this. We're using a background image for these sections. If you notice that when you downloaded it, it has kind of this little gradient right here where it gets goes from lighter to darker, kind of a cool effect. And it's got this really faint border around it. So we're going to make this section that exact size. So it'll have a width and a height and a background image. Okay. And then they're also going to be floated. And then we probably will need a little bit of spacing in between. So we'll get to that. Let's maybe add a margin. We need to have it on the outside, not padding, because padding will give it space in here. We want to give it that, let's do a margin left on this one. And let's just say 20px. Again, you can increase or decrease that as needed. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quick so that I can look at that exact code for this section. Because I want to tell you the right one. Okay. So right here, I've got float left. So we've got that, check, width 431px. And if you wanted to do this, not a cheating way, but put in your background image and then hold your mouse over that image name and it'll come up with the dimensions. So if I do that right here, 431 by 204, that's exactly what I have here in width and height. So 204. Okay, and then I've got margin left set at 20. On this one, I actually have some really exact margins for every size, top, right, bottom, and left. Let's start with this one, see if we need to change it. I've only got margin left, but I do have them on all sides in my code. So if you want to get a little bit more precise, you can come back to it. Okay, that's all we need for section then. Okay, so you can see I added in the width 431, height 204, background image, float left, and then our margin. Okay, I think after that, then we just have the footer. Okay, now I think we missed this on the science club, or at least I did first off. You probably are seeing that paragraph up here on the right because we have floated elements and maybe our sizing isn't exactly precise. So first of all, in the footer, let's clear both and force it down to where it needs to be. Okay, then we can see that there is a background color. It's that darker yellow. So get the hex code from Schoology. Okay, and then it looks like I might need some padding or height, or maybe both to make that a little bit taller. I'm going to go ahead and put height in there. And then we will do a shortcut and center that text, the paragraph here, by using text align center. I'm going to go with 30px on the height, and you can adjust that up or down if you need to, and then text align center. Okay, and that should be everything. If you need to pause the video at any time to go back over something or review it, I'm sure I'm going really fast. So please do that and take this at your own pace. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go over every one of the CSS codes that I had in mind, and then you can see how it compares to yours. Okay, so let's go back up to body. So we started with that background image, and it looks like I put them all in the same statement. Instead of having background repeat and background position, I just put it all in one. So there's our no repeat, and there's our position top center. Okay, header, we've got the width, margin left auto, margin right auto, our background image, again with no repeat. And then I've got a little bit of padding on the top too. You can adjust that if you need to. All right, and it looks like I put on the nav, I gave that a margin bottom of 100 pixels. I think when we went over it in the video, we put it on the paragraph. So you can put it in, or sorry, we did a top padding on the paragraph. So lots of different ways that we can do it. We've got margins and padding, top and bottom, depending on the element you put it on. That's all right. Okay, so here's that paragraph for the headline. And I think there might have been, I don't think we put body text on this one. You can check Schoology just to be sure. I added font family for serif, font size 24. There's that color. I also made it bold. And then I gave it a width of 400 px. I think that in our video we did 250. So if you see that that is too short, you can go ahead and increase it to 400. Okay. All right. And main. Oh, let's see what I missed in here. So I've got some margin and padding. I have the background color, and I forgot during the video, we have elements that are floated inside of main. So we do need that overflow hidden property so that the background will show behind those floated sections. Okay, I'm moving on to the unordered list. I've got margin 0, padding 0, list style type none. And then I did put a width of 160 px on that one. So let's look at the list item. Text align center. Oh, that's one that I forgot. So make a note of that if you want to move it into the center. There's the background color. I've got a height. Margin top also, I forgot to mention that one. So you can go back and add it in. Remember, we've got a background color. So if we want a little teeny bit of space in between so that they look like individual buttons, do add a margin. That'll give it just a little bit in between each of those list items. Padding, on the other hand, would be inside, so you'd see more color. And then there's the font size. I did change the font size on that one, color white, font family, Arial black. And then there's that border radius to make the curved edges. Okay. And then article right here. So we've got a width of 960, and then I put my margin into one statement. So top, right, bottom, left. So there's my margin left auto, margin right auto right here. So there's right and there's left. Okay, then the section, float left, width 431, height 204. And then those different margins. So if you want to experiment with that a little bit, that's great. Background image, there's that frame. And I have two classes here that say float right and float left. Let's get to that in just a second. Okay, and I did put those headings. Oh, I think I missed that when we went over it. So let's make sure that you add that in on the headings that are in this section. That will format the color and the font family. And then I've added some left padding just to keep it away from the edge. And then a padding left. I'll go back over my code and see where that got put in. Footer, so I've got 100% wide, text align center, background color, height. I just put 100% on that one because I did have padding on it, but we can do it a couple of different ways. So if yours doesn't look exactly the same, it's totally fine. We're just going for close. Okay, and I do know on this float right and float left, I know a little bit of where that is. Let's go to my HTML. So I think you're realizing this in this section. So a couple of things. I'm going to go back to the screen for just a second. In here, we've got a heading, a paragraph, and an image. That image needs to be floated right. So that's where that class came from, the float right, and put it in the image here. And I'll just show you what that looks like. So float, right? I created a class and called it float right. And I'm just going to tell it inside to float right. Okay, then on this image and this image, I need to add that class. So image class equals float right. And then you're going to have your source after that. Okay, so make sure that these two images get that float right so that they move over. And then the other thing to note, and you may have caught it in my HTML, it looks like we should have an H2, then a paragraph, and then an image. However, when we float it right, because they're in that order, you'll see these two on top and then that image underneath it. That's still not what we want. So if you'll go back and change the order of your image and put the image first in this section so that it goes image, heading, and then paragraph, then it will start floating at the very beginning. So it'll fill in that space, and then these will fill in on the left side, and just like that. Okay, I'm going to go back to my code just to double check that I got everything else. Okay, so on the paragraphs, it looks like I did a padding left, so they were a little bit close. You can add that if you feel like you need to. And then I do have that order image, and then heading, and then the paragraph. And I'm just looking to see, I had a class that said float left, and I'm not sure that I even used it because I had the padding left. So just ignore that part of my code, but I believe everything else then is just right. So there's that padding left that we put on the paragraph, and you can do that or not, it's up to you. Okay, go back in the video if you need to, if I was unclear on something. Just remember that these need to be pretty close, but not 100% exact. So don't feel like you have to copy my code exactly. More of what I want you to do with these practice pages is just to get used to aligning and adding backgrounds and styles and practicing. So don't stress over it being super, super perfect, but just make yours look pretty close. Okay, that is the Sushi Restaurant homepage practice page.